Hey guys, you're watching Halborn Flash Videos, and on today's chat, we have got Cain from Kryptonite joining us in to tell us a little bit more about the world of LSDFi. So, Cain, first of all, thank you so much for joining us on this chat and tell us a little bit about your story and where you're joining us from today.
Awesome, Arabdha. Thank you for having us. Right now, I am in Shanghai, China. Normally, I'm based out of the States, but doing a little traveling for the month and glad to be a part of this. So I'll give a quick background about myself and how I got started in this whole space. So I've been in crypto since about 2016, 2017. I've seen it all, pretty much like the ICO craze to DeFi summer to NFTs before NFTs were actually cool. First thing that I've been a part of was I got my feet wet when I just bought some Ethereum and then I just wanted to get deeper into the space. And one of the advices that I got it from my mentor was just get involved with the project. So I got involved with an ICO project. It was trying to do social media on the blockchain and it was crazy back then. It was a little bit of the Wild West. That project raised about 22, 23 million at that value or at that time at that current valuation. So this is back in 2016, 2017. And I was there for maybe about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And this was when DeFi summer started to rise up. And DeFi was basically the reason, or basically finance was the reason why I got into crypto and why that interested me. And so because of that, I made the switch and I started working with a close friend of mine. And we actually initially were doing some version of what Celsius was kind of trying to do, but we ended up migrating into doing uncollateralized loans. And
Right.
so it branched off a little bit far from that. So that project was called Teller Finance. Shout out to Ryan Birkin, he's one of my close friends. And we ended up raising about I think about 1 million in about a month and a half. Just because, and funny enough, it was actually supposed to be a test product for an infrastructure that we were building, but then everybody wanted to give us money to actually build the test project as a real project. So we ended up doing that instead, and it became successful. And so I was there for a little bit less than a year, I believe. I actually had to leave because of personal reasons, mainly because my son was being born. And so that was something where I actually was uncertain of the future in terms of crypto because that was one of the winters that we started entering into. And so because of that, I took a step away, ended up starting to get into a little bit more of the Web3 consulting side of things. And so I was part of a Web3 collective. We were working with projects around the Web3 crypto space. A few of the original members split off and we founded our own Web3 marketing group, and with that, we've worked with the likes of some of the, really big names, most notably like Colony. If you're familiar with DAOs, they're pretty big in that space. And then also Immunify, which is one of the other bigger security companies. And so that's where I first heard of you guys. That's when I first got my feet wet in terms of the cybersecurity, Web3 security space in terms of what happens there and the kind of work that goes through it and a lot of the people that are involved in it in that space. So, with that, from there, I ended up knowing my co-founder for Kryptonite since, funny enough, the ICO days. We stayed in touch ever since, just trying to find some opportunities to work on. Nothing really matched. And we actually worked on a previous project. It had a hot start and fizzled out, but we were already working on Kryptonite on the side. And with that, we started working together, working a lot more closely. Everything has just been snowballing from there, and we've been seeing a lot of good success. Built a really solid community. Really met some awesome people and some awesome partners, especially Halborn with you guys, and glad to be a part of your guys' network.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your background with such detail. With Web3, I feel like everything is a bit of a snowball effect anyway, and the community just ends up knowing each other in the most ingenuine ways, no matter what. All right, so you have
It's
been
a
a
small
fully,
world, I'll tell you
it
that.
is a small world, and it keeps getting smaller with events sometimes. So, being a complete Web3 native, what prompted you to start Kryptonite?
So there was a big need. So it was one of the things that we kind of ran across. I would say one of the bigger problems that we ran across, especially specifically in the Cosmos IBC ecosystem, was just the lack of like capital efficiency. Really, that's really the big thing was that when you take a look at the Cosmos ecosystem, what is the biggest, I would say, chain there, or ecosystem there. It's really osmosis. But then everything after that, you just have a lot of things where, for example, you stake X token and it just stays there. It doesn't really do anything, right? It doesn't do anything for you, except it just sits there and it's locked away. And the only way is to unlock it. So what we kind of come up with is to, when you stake and lock your tokens, you're still able to use that lock liquidity. So we call it unlocking. It's like unlocking your lock liquidity so that you can actually, so it actually does something for you. So while you're staking your rewards, you can still use that as collateral and take out a loan or borrow to like buy more stable coins or pay off something else or do whatever you need to do with it. And so you still have that extra capital efficiency and that flexibility to do what you need to do with that, with the funds that are locked in there. So they're not just locked away and then they're just idle. And that was the big thing that we saw in Cosmos was there's just a lot of idle liquidity. You lock it away, you stake it, which is great. You get a lot of yield, but then what happens after that? You can't do anything with it. It's just there. And so we want to put that to good use. We want to expand on the flexibility and the advantages of the technologies in DeFi and blockchain, especially using the Cosmos, IBC stacks.
Yeah, solving liquidity on Cosmos is quite a mission statement to have there. So building on that, what prompted you to build on Say as like a L1 itself?
I would say in the beginning, I know it's kind of changed since the beginning, but we started building on Say because the ecosystem was lively. It had a huge community. It was one of the faster blockchains. And I think one of the big things that they were touting was that initially, I know that the narrative has changed a little bit to include gaming and NFTs and all that, but initially they were a DeFi focused chain, right? So their whole point was to solve a lot of the issues in DeFi, especially, for example, like the fast settling time or the whole order book side of things, where you have liquidity that's collated instead of being fragmented and separated into different ecosystems and different platforms. And take a look at a lot of different ecosystems. You have, for example, fragmented liquidity, and what I mean by that is, for example, you have project A, project B, project C, each with their liquidity pools, all separate from each other. So what we're trying to do, what Say was trying to do, is try to bring that all together so that there's one connected back end, right? If that makes sense, so that it's not all fragmented. It's not like project A gets all the funding or project A gets all the liquidity and then B and C kind of get lost in the fold and they get, the scraps and whatever else is ready for it. So that's kind of what we were focused on. And that's one of the I would say probably one of the main factors in terms of why we were more attracted to Say. Say was an ecosystem that we wanted to build on, namely that, and a lot of the ecosystem support that we were receiving from the Say team themselves, as well as a lot of their partners and infrastructure applications and partners that they've linked us up with.
Why the name Kryptonite?
I don't know if there's like a good story for the name Kryptonite. I think it was one of those things where we sat down with the team at Say and we were trying to figure out a name. So we had the concept of what we wanted to do. We had the vision of what we wanted to do, which is basically supercharging the LSDFi world and unlocking assets that are normally locked, and being kind of that mashup between Lido and Maker, right? Frankly, it was just one of those things we kind of came across in terms of names that we put on the board, and it actually sounded nice. And it was something that was interesting. And funny enough, if you take a look at some of our earlier branding, we had our own little like Pepe, Super Frog, or Superman kind of branding, which is awesome. It was a big hit over the summer, leading up into a lot of the activities that we're going into August and September, which is basically our token launch, Say's token launch, Say's mainnet, and things like that. So it was actually a big hit. It was a lot of fun. It was fun to do. Our artists had a lot of fun doing it. But there's really no rhyme or reason for Kryptonite in terms of what the name is. But I think
that's a cool story though. It has a very cool ring to it.
It does. And as we kind of move along, it seems as if it's gained its own following and its own branding of essentially not being part of the normal DeFi world of being another exchange or another AMM or another just staking and lending profile. So it's a little bit of a twist in terms of what's some of the other products that are already out there in the crypto space.
How would you say Kryptonite is different from the other liquid staking platforms in Cosmos?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big one. I think it's different in a multitude of ways. So, like I mentioned earlier, it's a mashup of Lido and Maker. In this case, you would stake Say or Atom or whatever blue chip asset that you have. And yeah, you get your token, your ST token back, or showing that you're part owner of whatever is in that pool. So you have X amount of token represented by this token. What's cool about it, it leads into the Maker side of things, is basically when you stake a blue chip asset, let's say or Atom, for example, right? You stake that, you collateralize that, you can essentially mint out KUSD. So KUSD being the Kryptonite native stablecoin, so KUSD. And with that KUSD, you can basically do what you would normally do with, for example, the same thing if you stake ETH to get DAI, you would be able to use that DAI, or in this case, this KUSD, to do the same thing. You can use KUSD to buy more stablecoins. You can use KUSD to buy other assets. You can use it to pay off a loan or whatever it might be. So I think that's unique in the fact that, like I said, you're collateralizing these assets that are already being staked. So you're essentially earning yield while you're already earning yield. So that's the interesting part of things, is you can stake your blue chip assets, or you can already stake assets so that you can essentially be able to unlock that lock liquidity, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah, that actually helps me understand and clarify a lot of how KUST works as a token as well. Fantastic. So let's talk a bit of security. We are working together right now on securing the code base of Kryptonite. So what was your original security strategy generally, and why partner with Halborn?
So our general security prior to Halborn was initially Kryptonite started off as a fork of Anchor protocol. Anybody that has been in this crypto space, especially in the whole Luna Terra fiasco, and has been in that, you would know how much liquidity was flowing through Terra and how much was flowing through that Anchor protocol. I think it was just, if I'm not mistaken, maybe into the billions or hundreds of millions. It was just a lot of money. And they were lucky enough that they didn't get hacked. So our previous thing was to fork Anchor protocol. And because their smart contracts weren't hacked at that time, we were hoping that they were secure enough to hold for the first few phases of what we were trying to build, right? And so that was our premise before Halborn. Since then, we were building and this was when we were just starting off. And when we were just starting off, our whole goal was to just be a fork of Anchor protocol, pushed onto Say. So it was stake your assets and you get some sort of set yield, this fixed yield, right? Whatever that might be back then. I know Anchors was 20%. I don't think we are doing 20%. I think we're doing something around 5%, right? In that case, when we did that, we were thinking, okay, if Anchor smart contracts were good enough and we're able to hold through all that volume, then it should hold through whatever was being pushed through Say. It should be no issue. But since Say was delaying their mainnet launch from, I would say, about April all the way up until September or August, really, we were actually able to build more. So that's when this idea and this mashup between Lido and Maker, in terms of being able to stake your staked assets, mint KUSD as a stable coin, it became a little bit more complex. And this is when I reached out to you guys to be able to work together to partner up and really shore up our security side of things. So prior to Halborn, it was more of a cross your fingers. Hopefully the contracts that held before still held on a different network. But then once we moved in with you guys, our whole strategy changed. So our whole strategy became security being number one. And for every project that I've worked with, I've always made sure that security and assets being secure and not being at risk was always going to be a priority for me. For any projects that I work with, and I make sure of that with all my co-founders, and as long as we're all on board, we're all good. And that's how we came to start working with you guys.
All right, security is a rather competitive space. Why partner specifically with Halborn, and how has been your experience thus far?
So basically, I mean, it's a no-brainer, honestly. Halborn's easily one of the top, if not the top security, company within the Web3 space. And it's easy to see your track record, your guys' track record, how you guys approach clients. It tells the story. It like I said, it's a no-brainer. And so when I reached out to, shout out to Min Kim, she reached out to me to see if we needed any help. And so conversations started moving forward. I know we got asked by a few other security companies or security firms, and Halborn just seemed to be the most logical and best fit. And like I said, the track record speaks volumes, right? It was an easy decision to make. And so for us, it was like, hey, if Halborn wants to work together, we're definitely going to say yes, because all the other companies said yes. But again, you guys were our number one in terms of priority, in terms of who we want to work with. As far as this experience, it's been top tier in terms of professionalism, getting updates, getting a response back, pinging you guys for questions. It's just been super easy. I think that's the best way to say it. Super easy, super professional. And every time we needed something or had an issue, or you guys had an issue, the conversation and the back and forth has just been very direct, very straightforward. Yeah, we have our fun times and this and that, but again, like, security is one of those things that really has to be, taken seriously, and has to really be a priority for a lot of these, especially these DeFi projects in crypto, right? You take a look at what's been happening in the space, and every week, if not every other week, there's always some sort of exploit or this or that, or some phishing or whatever it might be, because sometimes security is so easy to overlook. But the way you have to look at it is you have to be at the forefront. You have to be as dynamic as all the changes in your code. Any little feature change or update or whatever you might be has to be taken into consideration. It can't just be, oh, we made an update, it's so small, that's it, it's a done deal. I don't think that's the right way to approach it, especially since the space, like, you have some of these protocols that are unaudited, or they don't have second looks at them, and they're holding like millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's your assets and my assets that are on the line. And when they're gone, it's in space. When they're gone, they're gone. No one's going to print any more of this. And so that's just one of those things that we've always taken seriously in every project that I've been a part of. Is I'm always making sure that the security experts that we're working with have the same vision in terms of what we want to achieve. And I think for us here at Kryptonite, Halborn definitely fits the bill, without a doubt.
That's always fantastic to hear, and we're glad to be working with you guys as well. It's definitely great founder advice. Cain, thank you so much again for joining me on this chat today. It was great talking to you and getting to know a little bit more about Kryptonite and your journey thus far. Thank you again.